The history of banking in Kenya traces its roots to early European trade on the East African coast, chiefly Zanzibar, in the later part of the 19th century. In 1887, Sir William Mackinnon, with the endorsement of the British Foreign Office, set up what later came to be known as the Imperial British East Africa Company, IBEAC. The formation of the IBEAC captured the attention of the National Bank of India, NBI, which entered into agreement with the East African representatives of the Merchant Company, Smith Mackenzie and Company, to act as its banking agent on the East African coast. In those formative years, NBI fortunes in East Africa were inexplicably linked to the fortunes of IBEAC, which was an independent corporate entity with its own flag, currency, postage stamps, private army and offices in Mombasa. IBEAC was wound up in March 1895 and replaced by the East Africa Protectorate, a system of administration that involved more direct British government control through the Foreign Office. Perhaps encouraged by the turn of events, NBI established its first branch in Mombasa the following year. In the same year, the East Africa Protectorate started building a railway line to Kisumu. NBI was appointed the official banker for the venture, marking the beginning of the bank's long and handsomely profitable relationship with what later became the colonial government of Kenya. The railway finally arrived at Kisumu in 1901 and helped to open up the hinterland for business. The fastest-growing inland centre was Nairobi, which had been established in 1899 as a camp for the railway crew. In 1904, NBI set up its first East African hinterland branch in Nairobi. The bank's business would grow as development in Nairobi grew. With economic growth in the Protectorate, more banks were attracted to the country, necessitating the government to pass the first banking ordinance in 1910 to regulate their operations. In January 1911, the Standard Bank of South Africa opened 2 branches in Kenya, one in Mombasa and the other on Delamere Avenue in Nairobi. The National Bank of South Africa came in 1916. In 1920, the East Africa Protectorate was declared a colony of the British Empire and its name changed to Kenya. The new colonial status helped the 3 banks grow rapidly, mainly through increased deposits from European and Asian customers. But banking services were not available to Africans. The only source of banking services for Africans was the Post Office Savings Bank, which started in 1910 as a department within the Colonial Postal Service. Even then, the service was only available in places where officials of the Colonial Postal Service were stationed and therefore did not reach the majority of Africans who resided in rural areas. In 1925, the National Bank of South Africa was merged with the Colonial Bank and the Anglo-Egyptian Bank to form Barclays Bank DCO, Dominion, Colonial and Overseas. Barclays took over the operations of the 3 branches of the National Bank of South Africa, then in existence in Kenya. Despite political upheavals such as World War II and the subsequent Mau Mau uprising, banking in Kenya experienced considerable growth. Between 1945 and 1960, Barclays Bank clerical staff grew from 283 to 1,163. In 1951, the bank also completed construction of a modern building on Queensway Street, at the time the tallest building in East Africa, to house its main branch and head office in the colony. The steadily growing Kenyan economy would soon lead to an influx of new banks in the decade between 1950 and 1959. In 1951, the Dutch bank, Algemeen Bank Nederland, NV, or General Bank of the Netherlands, opened a branch in Nairobi. It was followed by the Bank of India, which opened its first branch in Treasury Square in Mombasa on January 17, 1953, and the Bank of Baroda on December 4th of the same year, with its first branch also in Mombasa.
Somewhere that connection between Baroda and Indians, Asians settled in Kenya was there already, and the Bank of Baroda being the bank in that area, it became a bank for those people coming from Africa to India. We opened in Mombasa. Immediately within a year we opened the Nairobi branch, but once these two branches were settling down, we realized there are pockets of business areas like in Kisumu, like in Eldoret. But if you remember, in 1960s the communication lines were very bad. Infrastructure was really not there. But how to serve those people in those places? Business was happening there. So Bank of Baroda found an innovative way, banking on wheels, which today we call it mobile banking, which in 1960 was a very rarity. It happened that time. They were commuting to that city and taking the bank, doing the banking service there and putting the money in Nairobi. This was, even for Bank of Baroda, this was the first experiment banking on wheels in Kisumu, and from Kisumu and Kenya it migrated to India, where it became the most popular service of today.
The Pakistan-based Habib Bank Overseas Limited came in 1956, while the Ottoman Bank and Commercial Bank of Africa rounded off the rush by establishing branches in the country in 1958. After India attained her independence from Britain in 1947 and the subsequent hiving off of Pakistan, NBI changed its name in 1958 to National Overseas and Grindlays Bank, later called National and Grindlays Bank, following its merger with Grindlays Bank, another London-based bank which traced its roots to Calcutta, India. By 1951, the banks had expanded their branches considerably, but employment opportunities for Africans in the banking industry took a long time to materialize. Indeed, it was not until June 1963, a few months before the country became independent, that the first African manager of a bank branch, Peter Nyakiamo, was appointed. Nyakiamo was appointed sub-branch manager at the Queensway branch of Barclays Bank, after working for the bank for more than 15 years.
In fact, I joined the bank on 13 March 1947. The bank was being run by British, managerial, but the bulk, people who really work with Asians. You could say that probably we had 6 or 7 Europeans in the branch, the majority Asians. So you had number 1, a Mzungu, number 2, a nation, number 3, an Arab, number 4, an African. The banks went in for Africans to encourage them to come and bring deposit. I'll give you an example. When I was in Bungoma, I could open an account with 1 shilling. I went around the societies and asked them to open an account with 1 shilling. The same thing when I was transferred to Kisii. My job was go around and get the societies and African farmers to open at least an account, and with 1 shilling. So you'll have a ledger with 20 people, customers, but their balance is one shilling. But that was the first step, trying to introduce or to attract an African way of banking.